When was the last time your buyer was actually in the room when you made a decision about them? Hi, I'm Matt.
And I'm Jasmine. This podcast exists because that question matters more than most marketing teams realize. Let's get into it.
Hi, Jasmine. How you doing?
Good. How about yourself?
Very well, thank you.
So let's kick it off. Today we're going to talk about a recent post you wrote where it opens with a line that really stopped me. Your AI stack is now infrastructure, and you probably didn't notice when that happened. I want to start there. Who is Henry and why does he matter?
Henry is fictional. He's built from real conversations I've had with life science tool CEOs over the past year or so. Fast growing companies where they've tried to adjust to uncertainty of funding and geopolitical uncertainty with rather than growing the team, trying to make sensible decisions and applying AI.
So, what was the trouble?
He adopted AI first. Marketing productivity went through the roof. Compliance review cycles dropped. The board was really happy. But then once you start getting routine model updates buried somewhere in the platform terms that changed how the tools behave. Those tools were now embedded in improved workflows and they weren't able to be rolled back because the old models were no longer available. So getting the previous behavior back meant weeks of prompt re-engineering with no guarantee of success or moving the workflows to different providers entirely.
So, how much would this cost?
Well, I mean, it depends on how embedded it is, but you can imagine months of work trying to make sure that everything's re-engineered. It's just a lot of rework going back through the processes. And it's not just fixing the prompt, it's going back through any of the regulated process that you have. If you're operating under ISO or even greater regulatory conditions, you have to go through and make sure everything's validated, and that can take a long time. So that's really the issue. It's not necessarily just the reprompt engineering. It's going through the formal process of revalidating every step in those processes.
So, when I put my commercial leader hat on, I read that and immediately thought about how many teams are doing the same thing right now, just one level down. Not a single CEO level infrastructure call, content workflows, claims tools, campaign automation. Same pattern, smaller scale, same loss of control when something underneath changes.
That's the argument. It's the same mechanism, just a different scale.
Okay, so can you walk me through the sequence? Henry made 5 or 6 decisions before he realized he had a problem. What were they, and why did each one feel reasonable at the time?
Well, each decision felt very, very reasonable. The first decision was the easiest. His marketing manager started using ChatGPT to draft campaign copy. The output was good and quite fast. His sales team used AI to prep for customer calls. Sage researcher automated 2 hours of weekly report summarization. None of it cost real money. The instinct was right. This was a competitive edge sitting on the table, and he moved. The second decision was the enterprise license rollout, AI embedded across the commercial team. Marketing was able to increase their output dramatically. Campaign turnaround was much faster. And that was where most leadership teams stopped evaluating and started scaling. But the third decision was headcount when people left, choosing not to backfill roles, but trying to make sure that tasks were reassigned and AI was used to fill the gaps. In a market where specialist commercial talent is already scarce, holding open headcount felt prudent. Output held up and the decision looked correct. But the fourth decision was the one that created the structural problem, approving the use of an AI tool that validates marketing materials against brand and regulatory requirements, embedded deeply inside the compliance workflow. Now, this is the decision that changed the nature of every decision before it. Now, Henry had moved from using AI to assist people into using AI inside a process that is legally required to be documented, validated, and auditable. That is a different category of commitment, and he hadn't realized it. The fifth decision was the absence of one. He never asked what would happen when the tool changed. He assumed continuity because the output had been reliable. The assumption is what the model update exposed.
Okay, so the pattern I keep coming back to is the marketing approvals workflow specifically. In life sciences tools companies, getting marketing material through regulatory review is a real bottleneck. A tool that cuts 2 weeks to 3 days is a competitive advantage. I can see why the call gets made. What I don't think most leadership teams realize is that the moment AI enters a validated compliance process, it stops being a productivity tool. It becomes infrastructure. And infrastructure carries a completely different risk profile.
That's the sentence the whole blog tries to land. Once you've automated the work and at the same time outsourced control of the work, when both happen together, it feels like the same decision, but it really isn't. And you've got to be really careful in being able to distinguish what you can change and what you can't, and where the work is to re-go through a new process. Even if you were just looking at the front end of a process, just shifting from ChatGPT to Anthropic's Claude would be quite a big lift if you've already got lots and lots of automation, custom GPTs, and a whole range of work that you're building an organization on. One model update can break a lot of those things. And so really being clear about what's important to the business and what we have control over is really critical.
So, is this actually a life sciences problem? Any company in any industry embedding AI in core workflows faces the same vendor dependency. What makes life sciences specifically more exposed?
Two things. First, GXP in a pharmaceutical or medical device adjacent business, any process that touches product claims, compliance sign off, or regulatory submission lives inside a validated environment. Validation means documented, auditable, and change controlled. When the AI tool inside the environment updates its model, the change is no longer just a product quality issue, it's a potentially a regulatory event. Switching costs aren't just technical, it's a revalidation program that can take time and resource away from getting the work done. So no matter how clean the technical move would be, the revalidation is the problem.
So, Henry's resolution is commissioning a control layer. I had to read that section twice. Sorry about that. What is it in plain language, and why is the answer rather than just better vendor selection?
So a control layer is a buffer between your business processes and the AI tools running underneath them. The simplest way to think about it is instead of your compliance tool talking directly to whatever model the vendor has chosen, everything runs through a middle layer that you own. That layer's job is to translate. Your process sends a request, the middle layer routes to whatever AI model is currently best for the job. The response comes back. From your process perspective, nothing has changed when the underlying model changes. The middle layer absorbs it. In practical terms, tools like OpenWebUI sit in that role. Essentially, they're a control panel where it allows you to be able to select models and create that buffer between the business process and the model itself.
Let me put this in commercial terms because that's where the real implication sits for most CEOs listening. When you embed AI into your content approval workflow, say an AI tool checking claims consistency or flagging regulatory language, you're making a decision that looks like a productivity choice and is in fact a multi-year infrastructure commitment. The control layer principle means asking before you embed it, if this tool changed its behavior tomorrow, could I swap it out in a week? If the answer is no, you either build the control layer first or you keep the process human run until you do.
Yeah, and the regulatory classification question is the other half of it. In the story I told, Henry's mistake was not separating his AI tools by their regulatory exposure. Some tools sit inside validated processes. Those carry GXP switching costs and need for formal change control. Others are experimental, marketing copy, content drafts, call prep. They carry only the switching cost of actually switching the human behavior behind using them. Treating them identically is how you end up with a big problem in a workflow that started life as a time saver.
So the practical map is this: every AI tool you use or are evaluating sits in one of two buckets: validated process or experimental workflow. The governance, the vendor contract review, the control layer question, all of that is determined by which bucket it sits in.
Exactly. And the honest version of Henry's story is that he never drew that map.
Mhm.
Nobody had told him he needed to. So just to play the devil's advocate here, the control layer does add a level of complexity and cost to solve a problem that some may never face. But I think it's becoming increasingly clear that as we adopt AI more and more organizations start looking at how and where they can reap the benefits from AI, we have to be more and more careful about where we apply it and just look at what are the implications for things when the model changes, because the models are getting better and better. And many of the organizations are now deprecating some of those old models. And that's the risk. It's not just about being able to say, hey, well, we'll just carry on using ChatGPT 4 because you now can't access it as easily, even via an API. So it's about being able to say, right, what happens here? And I think this is where, for a lot of organizations, what's going to happen for some of those processes, they're going to be choosing either open source models or using models that they have more control over, making sure that they exist. Henry's story doesn't end badly. And doesn't have to. He made sure that he commissioned that control layer, and he made sure that he continued to reap those productivity gains. But what changed was the architecture, and with it, the answer to the one question that when the model changed without warning, are you still in control of your business? And that's really important. You need to be able to make sure that when the model changes or if a vendor goes out of business, that you don't just have a big gap left in your business processes, but you've got something that you can easily switch through.
So, for a CEO of life sciences tools company, the practical question's this: draw two columns, validated process, experimental workflow. Put every AI tool you are currently using in one of them. And if anything in the validated column doesn't have a clear exit path, a way to swap the underlying model without a 6 month revalidation event, that's your first call tomorrow morning. The Clarinet story is the other half of this, which we didn't spend time talking about. Even the company that became the poster child for AI replacing human roles had to quietly rebuild the human layer it thought it had eliminated. Quality became the binding constraint. In a regulated industry, quality is also a legal obligation. The humans who understood the process before AI ran it are not optional infrastructure. They're the insurance policy, and don't let them quietly disappear.
I couldn't agree more. Should you choose to read it, the links are in the show notes. The full post, congratulations, your AI stack is now infrastructure, is at striven.com. And if you're working through an AI governance question in your commercial team right now where you recognize Henry in your own organization, we'd love to hear about it.
And if you're the CEO or marketing leader who just drew those two columns and found something in the wrong bucket, come and find us. That's exactly the conversation this podcast exists for. Again, fantastic conversation, Matt. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Jasmine. Look forward to catching up again soon.
Sounds good.
Thank you for listening to a splice of life science marketing. We hope you enjoyed the episode.
If this conversation helped you, the single biggest way you can support the show is to subscribe and leave a review on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. We'd really appreciate it, and it makes a huge difference.
You can find out more about us and the topics we discuss at striven.com or on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for listening. We hope to see you next time.